to talk to you a little bit about some of the damage that we see on credit reports in the form of collections. Now, as we know, starting as of late last year, many people were impacted by some very scary situations. One is interest rate hikes on their credit cards. One, typically this is happening quite frequently where a family may have 4 credit cards by Chase or Citibank. That's very common. The wife may have 2, the husband may have 2, because as we know, credit was freely given out with very, very limited restrictions. But the banks now, as you know, they are raising interest rates, and more importantly, they're lowering credit lines. And as we've talked about, lowering credit lines changes your maximization usage, which actually lowers your score. So many people are finding that credit cards are becoming overbearing and they cannot pay them. So a couple of things can happen with that. Naturally, it'll start the process of the credit card company contacting you and forming their collection procedures. It could be either via mail or via phone calls. And there is laws that govern what they can and cannot do. Now, the other option after they do that, they have determined whether they can collect from you or not. They may offer you a settlement, they may not. But 2 things may happen depending on the size of the debt. A very common thing is those balances are sold to a collection company. Now, it's important to remember that the original debt is posted on the credit report as either a charge-off or collections. So you have a negative impact there. And then when it's sold to a collection company, it starts another negative process. And so just be aware that that is going to impact your credit. The second thing is that depending on the amount and depending on who the credit card is with, what we are seeing is that the credit card companies are taking the debt to court and filing a civil judgment. Now, what you'll see happen there is that if you do not go and contest that, the court will award the creditor the judgment, civil judgment, and it will post on your public records. And almost always, the civil judgment will be higher than what the original amount is because they've added interest and fees. So ignoring a debt is going to get basically very ugly for you. And once the civil judgment is posted to your credit report, almost always it is not negotiable. So that becomes the new amount. And that can lead to future issues where, since the civil judgment is on your credit report for the public records, at one time you may find this will lead to a wage garnishment. So going through these events, understand that you can't ignore them, that you need to get qualified counsel on how to deal with these collections. Let's talk about some other damages to your credit report, collections and charge-offs. Collections and charge-offs, naturally they bring your score down, they report negatively against you, and there is something that you are going to need to deal with. There's a couple of scenarios on what happens. Let's just assume that you have a credit card that you become late on. Naturally there's damage for that, and then for whatever reason, if you don't pay it, then they determine that they're going to attempt to collect that debt. Most always they'll close the account and then they'll start the process of attempting to collect from you. That'll either involve calling you, sending you letters, and then depending on the amount, one of 2 things will happen. One is they may sell it to a collection company, and then your original damage is on your credit report, and then the new collection company buys that debt and they start the process, usually inflate the amount. They're a little bit more aggressive on their phone calls and their attempts to either write or collect from you. So you have to deal with that, and it's another negative impact on your credit report. Now, depending on the amount of the original credit debt, the creditor may follow, if it's a large amount, may follow what we're seeing happen quite a bit, where the creditor will go and file a civil judgment. So this is a legal event that actually gets posted on your credit report under the public records. So public records are anything that has gone through a court system. It could be a bankruptcy, it could be child support not paid, it could be a civil judgment, tax liens, any type of a court affiliated event. So if it goes to a civil judgment, what you will find is that the creditor will take the action to court, and you'll almost always find, if you don't contest it, you will find that the amount that has been awarded is higher than the original debt. Reason being is they're allowed to add in fees and interest. We've seen these accumulate very, very high. Now, the concern for you is that the civil judgment, once again, is a legal action, and at one time they can exercise rights. It may be a wage garnishment or some attempt to collect from you. So do not ignore collections, and do not ignore the fact that if you get a summons that a creditor is taking you to court. Some of the options you have on collections, we would look at collections a little bit differently than what you may look at them as a normal consumer. So collections are in a couple different categories. One is open collections, one is closed collections, and then one is basically outdated collections. So let me explain to you what I mean. An open collection is something that has either been a charge-off or a debt that is reported current in showing an amount, and they're reporting it current to the credit bureaus on a routine cycle. It's current in its reporting, and it's an open amount. A paid collection is when the collection that was current has been satisfied, the amount is changed to zero, hopefully, and then the collection is listed as a paid collection. Many times the creditors will not change the status of the collection from an open to a paid. So by requesting a satisfaction letter from the creditor saying that the account has been satisfied, either you can contact the credit bureaus and have it updated yourself. Now, we also do come across collections that are outdated. There are collections that show a balance of monies owed, and for whatever reason the creditor has stopped pursuing that debt. It still is an open collection. It will stay in your credit report for many, many years, and it can be and will be a hindrance to any fundable event that you're doing, attempting to get a loan. I'd like to emphasize the importance that credit is very important, but most importantly, you can control your credit. Understanding the principles of how credit is derived by understanding that you don't want to be late. That's the most important thing. You want to work very, very hard at keeping your credit usage below 30%. Limit giving out your Social Security number. You don't want people checking your credit. You remember that inquiries do impact your credit score. So you can, through education, understand how basically you can work the system and you can raise your scores. It's not so much how much money you have, but it's how you use your credit, and you can maximize it to achieve the score that you've always wanted.